2010's Gran Turismo 5 has this 67-song menu music playlist covering a myriad of genres, and I put them all on a tier list to definitively answer one question. Which Gran Turismo 5 menu music song is the best? Let's figure out the answer together. So, today's first artist is Teroma Koshida, who contributed 5 Bossa Nova songs to the menu soundtrack. Outside of Gran Turismo, he's a guitarist who has a few releases on his Bandcamp, but let's focus on what he's probably most well known for, that being his GT music. And starting off as the first song of many is Apollo. It's probably one of the most unique songs on the menu playlist, so it's fitting that it gets to go first. What sets Apollo apart is that it's the most peaceful and minimalistic on the list. Led by a single classical guitar, the song follows a simple melody on its sole instrument for its 3 minutes and 20 seconds of runtime. Small sonic details appear in the background, and the guitar strums vary with every go around, and I was originally not sure how to feel about all this. On one hand, this peaceful soundscape created by the guitar and the way it's played is incredibly calming, especially in the context of hearing this in the menus for the game. Plus, it can be argued that this song does a lot with very little, switching up its melody ever so slightly to create progression. But on the other hand, it could also be said that Apollo's instrumental minimalism and the fact that it stays so close to its central melody makes it too much of a drag to listen to. What it does to deviate from its main phrase is too little and ultimately causes it to feel way longer than it needs to be. My own opinion has fallen at various points on the spectrum. I really do have a soft spot for it, as do many others. I've seen plenty of comments on uploads for this song praising it for its serenity and emotional impact, and I've gotta agree. But I've also bemoaned the minimalism, almost going as far as putting the song in D tier earlier in this project's development. So, as a compromise between these factors, it'll go in a high C tier for the time being. Oh yeah, by the way, these are also all my own opinions, please don't hurt me. And as the second Bossa Nova song thus far, East Avenue is similar to Apollo in that it's uniquely meditative. However, unlike that song, East Avenue is less aligned towards pure minimalism, because instead of utilizing one single instrument, this song brings in a larger variety of instruments, including but not limited to the classical guitar from earlier, some percussion, a piano lead melody, and even some steel drums. And unlike Apollo, East Avenue pretty effectively switches things up with its melody, instead of staying anchored to one phrase. It's got a main part that alternates between various other melodies in its near 5-minute runtime. All of this leads to a song that I like a lot more personally. It checks both boxes of being peaceful while also staying fresh and melodically complex. But East Avenue still happens to be a bit boring and drawn out. As mentioned earlier, it is nearly 5 minutes long. And for both this one and Apollo, there's the added problem that they aren't really congruous with the racing game vibe, if you get what I mean. These meditative bossa nova pieces, while nice and relaxing, can feel a bit tonally incompatible with the high energy races you're thrown into. While you could argue that they serve to cool you down, I personally prefer at least some higher energy when it comes to these menu songs. For a good idea of what I'm looking for, keep watching for the A and S tier picks. And while you're at it, please like and subscribe, we desperately need it. Shameless plug aside, while both songs are really good, this tonal issue holds the two back from greatness, and it brings East Avenue specifically to B tier, above Apollo and C. Alright, this next one actually brings some energy into the mix, so prepare yourself. Holiday is a more energetic bossa nova song that increases the tempo and fills the soundscape with new instruments and a faster rhythm. And this choice already gives it the potential to edge out the two more laid back songs previously covered, just because the higher energy fits more in a racing game while still staying within the Gran Turismo vibe. Albeit on the shorter side at just under 3 minutes long, Holiday makes the best out of its short runtime by giving us a joyous piece that stands out simply on merit. The percussion rhythms accentuated by the subtle cowbell help give this piece a bit of a groove. Holiday combines that with a warm guitar part and the signature bossa nova classical guitar to offer something great in spite of its short runtime. But my favorite part personally is the outro. Something about the ending notes played by the main piano and flute just feels right to me. With that settled, Holiday finally gives us a relatively high A tier. No S tiers just yet, we'll have to wait a bit for our menu music goats to appear. And what a coincidence for the next song. It's called Sunday, which also happens to be the current day. That joke had a 1 in 7 chance of landing, so just pretend it's Sunday wherever you are. Bad joke aside, this song sits somewhere in between the previous two songs. While it's a lot less energetic than Holiday, it takes some of the chill vibes from East Avenue with the slower guitar intro. But the traditional bossa nova elements are here and accounted for, and it continues to work well in this song. It's a very relaxed composition that still manages to have some energy to it, which I like a lot. With a charming melody and a nice chord progression, this song builds off its bass melody wonderfully. I really do like Sunday, but it's still not that that crazy a song. Despite its classy structure and sound design, I still feel like there could be more to this piece, whether it be new parts, slight tweaks to the outro, or just some trimming down on time, so it'll go in B tier above East Avenue. And wrapping up the Bossa Nova section of the list is Wind Navigator, another track more similar to Holiday and Sunday in terms of energy. Right off the bat, I could say that this song has a really strong percussive element, well, same with the last two to be fair, but here in Wind Navigator, their syncopated drum fills set to tambourines and the low thump of I can't name drums for shit. You'll notice what I'm talking about when you hear the song. The two guitar parts also complement each other extremely well. It doesn't feel like they clash at all, rather they bring their own unique parts that all help different elements in the song, whether that be the lead melody or the background rhythms. So far, so good for Wind Navigator, but the main motif isn't perfect. Unlike Sunday and East Avenue, which kept things progressing with different unique sections, this song stays closer to a few main parts. It can work, but it doesn't have much of an effect on me compared to the progressive nature of the other two songs. Maybe it could also have a stronger intro, but as it stands, Wind Navigator is still a good track, so it'll go in B tier between East Avenue and Sunday. Overall though, not too shabby for our only Bossa Nova artist on the menu playlist. So with that section complete, we're now diving into the dance and electronic umbrella with the following 3 songs from Akita Yamaguchi, who has a few other electronic albums released on streaming services. The first of the 3 songs, At Night, starts off this dance and electronic segment with a bang. We've got a unique guitar intro, then the main part led by a piano, both of which are very soothing to the ear. All 3 of these songs we're about to cover have similar sound design to each other, mixing acoustic, electronic, and orchestral elements to create something that seamlessly captures the late 2000s, early 2010s PS3 aesthetic that Gran Turismo 5 was born in. I'd almost go as far as to say that this could fit in with the Frutiger Arrow aesthetic that I hold so dearly despite being a filthy new gen who was barely conscious in the late 2000s. Or more accurately, it and all the other songs under this genre meshes well with the PS3 photo gallery music. Is that Frutiger Arrow? You decide. Anyway, that's my aesthetic tangent over. I really needed to info dump about that. What's more relevant to this song in particular is how it progresses. We start off with a piano-centered main melody, then a guitar solo that complements the added instrumentation in this section. These shifts all help this composition to feel more alive and flowing. Then after that comes the best part. All the instruments kick in and build towards a climax that's such a joy to hear. Add in the piano and guitar melodies immediately afterwards to cap it all off, and we've got quite an awesome song on our hands. You know, just listening to this song brings all the good vibes I like from this time period. It's such a nostalgic and wonderful tune, and it truly deserves our very first S tier of the list, and I'm pleased to know that there's still 2 more of this artist's songs to review. And the first of those 2 is New Age. Basically, take At Night, crank up the PS3 aesthetic vibes a few notches, and you've got this song. It starts off with an even more uplifting guitar intro that plays the main chords, complemented by some programmed drums and small guitar effects sprinkled throughout. That then transitions into a sublime string part, which builds yet again into something beautiful just before the 1-minute mark. This song is just triumphant enough to feel satisfying after a long race, but still manages to offer a meditative rhythm as it alternates between more filled up string parts and more minimalistic guitar sections. Not to mention, as I hinted to just earlier, the sound design is very PS3 coded. Like when I think of a song from a Gran Turismo on the PS3, this would be the stereotypical answer, and that's in no way a bad thing. It's a unique aesthetic that I really do like. I'd say that these positives could put it on par with the previous song, At Night, but New Age is not free from flaws, as there's not much to the piece outside of the isolated climaxes brought by the string part, and in a vacuum, the guitar sections do start to feel stale as the song continues. But despite the lows that this song does have, its highs outweigh them just enough to keep it at a high A tier. So the last track we'll cover from Akita Yamaguchi actually appears to be a collaboration. Green Park sees credits for one Shinji Suzuki, who's probably done some stuff outside of Gran Turismo. Google results gave me this guy who worked on animation for Evangelion, but he might not be the same person as the one who worked on Green Park. Now, unlike the previous 2 songs, Green Park starts off with programmed drums before letting the guitar play the song's melody. This sets up a more chill vibe than the last 2 by holding back on the melody and allowing more of the background elements to shine. And just like At Night and New Age, Green Park's main claim to greatness is its wonderful progression. And although it is on the slower side, taking a while to reach its peak, said progression is there. It only really gets spicy at around the 2-minute mark, where more of the instruments in this piece combine to create a nice soundscape. However, it still takes around 2 minutes to get here. 2 minutes of nice but not truly phenomenal futzing around. So while there is something great in this piece, unfortunately it can't make it to S tier. It still earns itself a really good A tier though, thus sticking the landing for Akihisa Yamaguchi's section. 2 A's and 1 S ain't half bad. So the other artist under dance and electronic is relatively more well known, Keiji Yudai. He actually has a Wikipedia page where he's credited for stuff like Star Wars Visions and, interestingly enough, the orchestral arrangement for GT5 Prologue. Here in the full GT5, he has the following 6 songs. And how does his first song, A Point of Departure, serve as a first impression for this guy? This song really hasn't grown on me, and I don't think it ever will. Although I like the piano here, it's still very repetitive and a bit on the boring side. Sure, there are details that make things slightly more bearable to listen to, but this really isn't something that I would actively seek out. The main problem I have with Point of Departure lies with the unimaginative 4-chord lead synth game it tries to play. It sits mostly unchanged throughout the song and really starts to drag when it's this front and center in the composition. And when you factor in the lack of anything else to mention in this song, I kinda don't like this one, I'm sorry. We'll just put it in D tier and hope that the next song fixes things up a bit. And good for us, the next song does fix it. It's called Horizons in May, and immediately we can see some improvement. It still has a simple 4-chord melody, but it switches up the rhythm a bit. Plus, the piano here just sounds far more soothing than the previous lead, fitting in with the relaxing vibe of the rest of the song. Speaking of the rest of the song, I like it a lot more compared to Point of Departure. I know I'm not comparing Evos to Evos here, but the sound design fits more with the chillness of this song compared to whatever Point of Departure has going on. The main piano melody also complements the background instrumentation better in this song. And yeah, Horizons in May is actually miles better. The relaxing soundscape allows you to take in more of the song's details, like the waveform part that pans between both ears and the pad ambience underscoring the song. All these details are really effective in making a unique listening experience. But it's not like this song changed my life or anything, or shows off near perfect production that absolutely requires a listen or two, so it'll go in B tier for now. It does redeem from Point of Departure though, so it has that going for it. Finally, here's a genre that I'm more familiar with. In Transit has a beautiful 4 on the floor drum pattern and danceability that comes with my oh so beloved house. And yeah, even if, spoiler alert, there isn't much to this piece on the surface, I just really like house music, okay? Even if it is a bit repetitive and empty, I really like the groove provided by the drums, bass, and cool effects throughout. In my mind, this is close to what menu music for Gran Turismo should be like, energetic and danceable to keep the energy going in between races, while also jazzy and classy enough to put focus on the luxury this series has when it comes to collecting and racing cars, though I really do wish there was more. Without proper drops and other parts outside of the few sections we're given, that being the main part and the little piano break in the middle, In Transit doesn't really add up compared to other house songs that I like, so it doesn't really scratch beyond the surface in terms of musical complexity. That means it can only reach B tier at best, but I'll still give it the Lumi seal of approval that I invented just now for this song specifically. We're returning once again to relaxed vibes with Orange Boulevard. I like to say that this one is 2 songs in one, because on one hand, you have the first 2.5 minutes of the song with a more chilled sound design and a slower percussion part. Then it transitions into a completely different synth-led melody with a fuller drum rhythm that still keeps things somewhat low energy. It's an interesting way to structure a song, I'll give it that. And there's charm in both segments. The first one sets up a nice atmospheric soundscape, while the second one excels in providing a change in pace for an otherwise stagnant song. But that does bring up my main issue here. Both parts are pretty repetitive. While the first part isn't that egregious and in fact manages to stay a bit fresh with the changes in the string melody, the second one is literally intro, Control C, Control V, outro. It really needs some more time in the oven to help it stand out. So while the sonic elements here are great, the unfortunate structural issues bring Orange Boulevard down to B tier, comically close to East Avenue. Must be some city. I'm still holding on hope for Sunset Haze to be the second A tier or higher song from Keiji Yudai, because this trend with the last 2 songs isn't looking too good. Can Keiji Yudai pull through with this one? Sadly, no. Sunset Haze is yet another boring electronic song that doesn't bring much to the table. It's just a song that plays and nothing else. There's nothing here that attracts me to this song outside of the okay sound design and the second half structural switch up. The melody is unremarkable. There's barely any sonic progression. It's in one ear and out the other. I'm struggling to say anything else about this that wouldn't leave you as bored as I was re-listening to this, so I'll just be quick and put it in D tier. Please, Twilight Moon, one last chance for this artist. Please break the trend and be better. It's not fucking better. Look, I get that this song kinda has a nice atmosphere and works well as background noise thanks to the pads, but it's still just so boring. It's literally the same unchanged piano riff for 4 minutes and 6 seconds, joined by low energy drums and piano fills that offer the bare minimum for chords. It's just a huge nothing burger all around. It's empty, overly long, doesn't even have that much of a nostalgic appeal to me. I guess the laid back vibes are nice, but that's not due to any technical or compositional quality. It's just missing the parts that would give this piece any memorability. And I almost want to dock it more points out of inconvenience because the highest quality YouTube upload of this song by Southpaw not only forgets the artist's name in the title, but cuts off more than 40 seconds short of the end. But I'll hold back on letting it fall more because even discounting that gripe, it'll still go right into the bottom in F tier, concluding his contributions with heavily mixed output with 2 just good songs and 1 relative high in Horizons in May. Don't worry though, his contributions improve quite a bit when he reappears in Gran Turismo 6, and I promise that we can only go up from here. Yeah, so that dance and electronics segment didn't end so great, but let's just put all that aside because we're now transitioning into the meat of this video, the 29 jazz songs created by 5 different artists, and the first of these 5 takes up the majority of this already big proportion with 11 songs contributed, Daisuke Kawai. The jazz organist we're about to cover is apparently still active in the colossal 2026, mostly just playing a bunch of gigs and events. This photo on his website shows him playing in Anaheim from my home state of California, cool to see. Oh wait, that says LA. Damn it, I can't believe they relocated the Disney city to Louisiana. Anyway, quick game time. Let's play counting beats with Lumi. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep, while all the previous songs have had the box standard 4/4, 3/4, 6/8 type deal for their time signature, City Circuit does away with this and uses a 5/4 time signature. That fact alone already boosts its ranking quite a bit. Time signature fuckery is always appreciated here on this channel. And off that surprise, Daisuke delivers with a pretty catchy jazz tune. The saxophone part flows really well in 5/4. It definitely feels like something that was made for this time signature, rather than feeling like a 4/4 part with an extra beat tacked on. And the drum part's also fairly jazzy, contributing a groovy rhythm to the song that nicely complements the lead sax. The bass and organ parts on the side also subtly contribute to the feel of the song. Everything combined feels completely natural and flowing to the ear, which is made doubly so through the jazzy improvisations made throughout. It keeps this energy going with a sax solo followed by a longer organ solo where said instrument plays the main melody and the guy on the drums starts cooking for no reason whatsoever. Like the way it progresses and subtly changes the main melody afterwards with more sophisticated drum fills really helps it serve as a sort of bridge between sections. My small crayon-eating brain simply cannot comprehend the technical prowess displayed by this song. A 5/4 composition with the whole menagerie of classy jazz elements makes up City Circuit, and you better believe all that's worthy of an S tier. Really great first impression here. Now let's just see how Daisuke follows up from this. He follows up with song 2 of 11, Madeline, which is either named after the cake or some girl worthy enough of getting a GT5 mini song named after her. Whoever it's named after, Daisuke did them good with this piece. We're let in with a charming organ intro and the lead melody played on a vibraphone. It's a pretty catchy part that nicely complements the chord changes created by the organ and bass. The saxophone gets a moment to shine before a possibly improvised extended vibraphone solo plays. I really like how it slides down the scale during the solo at the 1 minute 50 mark. And doing some more cool jazzy stuff before returning to the main melody, this time with more saxophone sprinkled in. I totally know music terminology, trust me bro, and the instrumentation in the whole outro really does go hard. The organ, sax, vibraphone, and everything else reach a sort of climax that builds enough tension to be released wonderfully in that classic count bassy ending. It's a great way to cap off a great song, and this great song's an A tier in my book, even if there's still more to be desired out of it. So we've rebounded from that F tier ranking with KG and I earlier, and we're actually on a bit of a good streak right now. But can we keep this momentum going with the next song, Mighty Engine? Daisuke answers by delivering this just good song. Nothing great, but it suffices. Immediately, we notice that this song is far more energetic than the previous two, with a faster rhythm led by the drums and bass. The bass line in particular sticks out to me. It's got a nice sound to it, and same with the drums. Like, I don't know why the guy who plays the drums, whose name is Yasuo Sano by the way, went so hard for some of Daisuke's songs, but he did and I like it. There's some good organ improvisation in the middle part and a really cool drum break after that, but besides those things, I wouldn't say it's a truly amazing song. on. It does its job as a menu track and stands out a bit with its jazzy elements, but without reaching its full potential, so it'll earn a B tier for its efforts. In a similar vein to songs like City Circuit and Madeline, Modena is another relatively laid-back Daisuke Kawai song, and for some reason, I'm oddly attached to the 4 chords played on the organ and guitar that lead the song. They're subtle enough to where they don't dominate the mix and make the song too repetitive, but make up just enough to nicely complement the main sax melody. Plus, we get a break from it in the section immediately after, where the organ gets the main part and the guitar moves to the sidelines to support it. It has the effect of giving this song 2 different modes, if you will. There's the former part that supports the main motif, and the latter part that switches things up to build and release tension on a larger scale. Although this song is the longest of Daisuke's collection at 4 minutes and 26 seconds, I don't mind the length, but I still wish that there could be more to this song, mainly in the outro and its vibe and energy, because Modena is a bit empty in that regard. Still, it's a really solid track that falls around B tier. It's saved mostly because its good elements bring it up just enough for it to be a fun background song. It's the type of piece you'd hear somewhere like a cafe, like some kind of parkside cafe. We've got another chill jazz song in Parkside Cafe, and I gotta say that this one's a bit more of a vibe to me compared to Modena, because this one has a stronger main organ melody overall, one that's got stronger support from the other instruments in the mix while still remaining somewhat chilled. Although it's still on the longer side at 3 minutes and 56 seconds and feels a little drawn out, there are good parts to it. I like the progression at the end of the main motif, as well as the organ solo at the midpoint and the other different organ solo at around the 3-minute mark, and that intro line you heard at the beginning is also really fun. Not only does it serve as a nice introduction to the song, but it also serves as a nice outroduction to the song. It wraps things up wonderfully and almost bookends the whole piece in a way. So even if this piece is flawed, Parkside Cafe's got nice elements that bring it above Modena in a respectable high B tier. Still here, we're about halfway through Daisuke's section, so hang tight. We're gonna see if song number 6, C-Line, has enough to bring us back to A or even S tier. It's a return to the sort of high energy we saw in Mighty Engine and starts us off with the organ jump scaring us into the intro melody, which works well enough. Same with the main part, which has an interesting organ lead and some nice drums per usual for Daisuke. But that marks the end of most of my praises for this song. I don't really know why, but the rest of C-Line just hasn't really grown on me. What follows after this part, while good, doesn't really have much of an effect. Maybe it's the background sound design or something, but I can't get myself to like this as much as something like City Circuit, Madeline, or even Parkside Cafe. I have a hunch that it might be related to the ending, which deviates slightly from the similar previous section, but only fades out instead of carrying the momentum built by what's just been played. It's not a bad song by any means, I just don't think I'd go out and revisit it on its own merit, so it'll stay here in a high C tier. And after that, we're traveling to the complete opposite side of the energy spectrum with So Tenderly. The song has no drums at all. However, it still has a constant tempo and time signature with swings, so it can be led by just an organ and bass. And I have to say that this combination somehow works in a weird way. It makes good use of its minimal sound design through its melody. The song makes up for the lack of any other instruments by having more intricate melodies played by the bass and having the organ add small details throughout. The organ also gets a nice jazzy solo to switch up the song and allow it some spotlight in this bass heavy track. Overall, it's a pretty nice and experimental song that makes great use of minimalism while still remaining laden with complexities that make it worthwhile to listen to. But would I say it's on par with some of the A tiers on this list? Sadly, no. It's still limited in what it can accomplish by the fact that it only ever uses 2 instruments. But even if it can't reach true greatness, it still manages a high B tier below Wind Navigator, and it's an improvement from the other minimalistic song, Apollo. Oh hey, the drums are back. South Swing is a higher energy song that, true to its title, has quite a swingy rhythm, and based purely on my probably incorrect vibes, this one's also quite a bit more jazzy than the others with some more blues elements sprinkled throughout. The swing I mentioned in this song gives it a uniquely snappy feel that I personally enjoy, and I also enjoy how the guitars, organ, and saxophone combine to almost become one instrument when playing the main part. But after that comes probably the most interesting part of this piece. 3 solos, 3 different instruments, all back to back. The first one is sax led with support from the organ and guitar. I love the improvisation, especially as things get high near the end of the sax part and the background instruments all combine before going into the second solo. Said second solo is more laid back and led by the guitar. While the sax is sadly almost nowhere to be seen, the organ does a great job in filling the background noise and supplementing the solo. Then it's time for the organ to shine in the much shorter third solo. A bit more sax involvement, which is nice, and the guitar carries the whole thing nicely before returning things to the main part and eventual outro. It's certainly something to hear and is a nice concept on paper. It's executed pretty well too, but it can feel a bit long with 3 solos back to back even if they switch up the instruments. And as I mentioned earlier, the saxophone really needs to learn how to support the group more in those solos. Semantic satiation is crazy in this section, and don't you worry drum fans, I may have completely forgotten about you, but the drums here also do a great job as the backbone of the song, inside and outside the solo cluster. The bass is nice too, but not too crazy. Fortunately, after all that, South Swing still sticks the landing with a strong last minute and outro with more added details and more teamwork between the 3 main instruments. Overall, I really like what this piece is going for. Although it isn't perfect, it's got plenty of interesting elements that make it stand out in this large pool of Daisuke Kawai songs, and that earns it an A tier around the same spot as Madeline. Now, we're at the final 3 Daisuke Kawai songs, and Sunrise Ocean is the first of those 3. It's somewhat hard for me to describe what exactly this song is going for. Is it a high energy danceable tune? A more laid back composition to listen to in the background? Sunrise Ocean feels like a mix of the two, which can be great. We've just gotta see how it executes it. My opinion, it's a resounding, like I can see it has some good things like the cymbal heavy drum part and organ solo, but there's not much that I like out of this song otherwise. There's a slight sonic progression, but it still feels a bit boring and doesn't really go anywhere. This song overall is just a bit too bland and empty for my tastes. I'd love to see something out of this song, but I can't find much out of it. I could mention the lackluster outro or anything else, but I'm running out of things to say here, so I'll put it in D tier and leave it at that. Okay, 2 more. Hopefully Weekend can be better than D tier. It's another slow laid back song like So Tenderly, except unlike that song, Weekend isn't as interesting technically. It's mostly stale, with little to keep me hooked throughout the 4 minutes and 4 seconds this song runs for. Although it does follow a similar structure to other more successful Daisuke songs on the list, Weekend still feels repetitive. The background elements remain mostly unchanged while the organ gets all the attention. And while we do get a louder organ solo, it mostly restates the phrase already introduced 3 minutes earlier in the song, but it still somewhat works as background music for the menus. The song's designed spaciously enough to allow you to think about your crippling credit debt, but it mainly falters outside of that context. It needs way more substance if it wants to think about making it to the tiers where some of the other chill songs like East Avenue and So Tenderly lie, because as is, Weekend is yet another D tier for the pile. This is the final one, promise. But it's weird that we have East Avenue, South Swing, and now West 132 Street, but no North song in sight. But for now, let's just discuss the actual content of the song. I can certainly say already that this is quite an improvement from the last 2 songs. I'm a bit more attracted to this piece, mainly down to its groove set up by some banger drums and a nice organ part. I wouldn't really say this is a song I actively like though. It doesn't stick out to me as much, mainly down to how many of Daisuke's songs take up the soundtrack. Since there's just so many other songs by this guy, it feels like West 132 Street has to do something special just to not be drowned out by the others, which it doesn't do at all. So while I do like certain things in this, it's still too little too late for this song. It'll go in C tier for now. Ooh, we finally made it. 11 songs might have been a bit too much from Daisuke, but there are some bangers in here, so I can let it slide for now. Just ignore the few low points in this section, and you've got yourself a collection that handily illustrates the traditional jazz part of GT5's soundtrack. Okay, bear with me here because we've got another long boy coming up with Norihito Sumitomo. I don't even think I need to introduce this guy. If you've interacted with any Dragon Ball media, chances are you've listened to something composed by him. But for Gran Turismo 5's soundtrack in particular, he contributed 8 jazz songs to the menus. Starting us off as the only Norihito Sumitomo song to be titled in the first half of the alphabet, it's Hot Stuff, all caps when he spells songs by the way. And while we're starting off with him, we might as well compare his style of jazz to the other jazz giant we just covered, Daisuke Kawai. While Daisuke's style is more organ focused with swing elements in certain songs, Norihito's focuses mostly on the piano, with some of his songs having it as the main focus among few other instruments. But is his first song here true to its name is, well, Hot Stuff? It's nice actually. The bass and piano work really well together on the rhythm part. Same goes for the sax and trumpet on the main. There's also a smooth drum part that connects the two and a flute added later in the song that helps things even more. And here we have another triple solo like in South Swing, made up of 1 part sax, 1 part trumpet, and 1 part flute. All of this works well and good and sets up a wonderfully chill chill vibe. I'm still not too impressed by the song, but it does its job for 3 minutes and that's perfectly okay. That means it earns itself a pretty high spot in B tier. Our next song, Pathfinder, gets a similar start to Hot Stuff in the instrumentation department with bass piano and sax trumpet combos. However, unlike that previous song, Pathfinder is a bit slower, which brings out more chill in class. And structurally, Pathfinder is quite an improvement, alternating between two different parts that switch things up with the instrumentation every time. It allows parts for each instrument to shine and overall leads to a more re-listenable song. After the main melody is established, we're led into a serviceable piano solo that does its job in the song, though with a little room for improvement. Then we head into a part led by trumpet improvisation, which sounds really nice. Then the piano and bass return to dominate the melody with a different part from before. This little lick at the 2-minute mark always sticks out to me whenever I listen to the song. And after that, the drums get the spotlight with some cool break parts. Then we return to the main section. There's plenty to enjoy from this song. Even if it doesn't yet reach S tier, I still find a lot in it that pleases my ear. And for that, it deserves at least this spot right here in A tier. Now it's time for a more chill piano song in Reminiscence, the third so far from this artist. The drums take a break in this song to highlight the bass and piano, creating a positively laid back vibe that works well with the jazz instrumentation. The lead melody also isn't half bad. It's a bit catchy, might I add. Combine that with the addition of a guitar that ups the chill vibe this song has and later plays a classy solo, and you've got yourself a good setup for what could quite possibly be a goated song. And it does somewhat deliver on this promise by continuing its energy throughout its 4 minutes of runtime. Still though, it doesn't do much with what it sets out to do, and since it blends in with some of the other Norihito songs here, it does feel like it's not doing enough as a whole. But those good elements it has keeps it up in a high B tier. The next song, Side of You, marks the approximate halfway point in this section. It's probably the most piano heavy one out of all the songs here, and it plays a nice improvisational melody throughout. It takes up most of the song too, only giving up the main part to the bass once at around the mid section. And something else I noticed with Side of You is how nice the drums get in this, mostly. At the beginning, they're just fine. It's a bunch of rhythmic cymbal playing, what more can I say? But it does actually kick in after a minute or so to play a pretty complex and good sounding part. There's good elements in here, mainly the melody and the latter half's drum parts, but I wouldn't really call this song something that I personally love. So it's a B tier, right above Medena. And here's a funny story about the one after, Solitude. The opening few notes on the piano always make me think it's playing the Roost theme from Animal Crossing. I don't know, I just made that association with the notes one day and can no longer get it out of my head. That aside, it's yet another piano-centric piece, just like Side of You. But unlike that song, it feels quite a bit more boring to listen to. It's set to a much slower tempo and doesn't go anywhere with the main melody. There's a cool bass solo and a piano solo to be heard, but there still isn't much substance in either of them. Once again, there's not much else about this song that I can say. It still doesn't stick out at all compared to some of the others by Norihito. C tier. Now hopefully we could see more interesting songs from here. We're kicking off the last three with The Road to Success. The sax trumpet combo returns here to great effect. I just think the two instruments sound really good together, especially with Norihito's style of jazz. And not to mention, it's got another somewhat catchy melody to boot. Plus, in the piano part that alternates with the main section, we get a pretty groovy bass line that always sticks out to me whenever I listen to it. It nicely complements the piano in this section, but I do wish it kept this energy going all throughout the song. The Road to Success also has a piano solo. While it's not as strong as the one in Pathfinder due to its short length and just the general feeling of the trumpet being held back, it gives this piece that extra bit of character that helps it stand out. Even though I don't have the strongest connection to this song, it's still an improvement from the previous Solitude. So Road to Success can go into B tier below So Tenderly. So Tracks of Dream is another song. A song that exists. I'm running out of ways to introduce Norihito songs. It's another laid back piano led song, which is good I guess, but unlike some of the others here that failed in this prospect, I actually like this one more personally, because it has a much nicer melody and a much more soothing sound design. The main part alternates between the piano and the guitar, which works together pretty well. All of this helps to make Tracks of Dream one of the more successful chill songs in Norihito's section. But even with all these positives, it's not that much of a masterpiece to me. It's just a nice little song that helps you wind down in the menus, and that earns it a respectable B tier, around the same spot as Hot Stuff. Don't worry, we're almost through. After this song, we'll take a little break from the main list, but first, let's discuss Norihito's final song on the list, Winds. Once again, we have another Sumitomo style track that does its job but doesn't try anything too crazy. The intro's cool I guess, I don't really like the drums here, but the freestyle piano does make up for it a bit. But as we leave the intro, we're introduced to what's probably the song's namesake, the lead melody played on a flute. It's already catchy by itself, and it goes well with the instrumentation scene here that Norihito has established in his 7 other songs. Not only that, it harmonizes well with the saxophone that's added to the melody the second go around. Problem is, the song isn't really much besides that. There's a nice solo on the flute, but after that, it just returns to the main part with very little modifications, then it ends. Some more substance from this song would really be nice, because outside of those few positives, it's not that great a song. So Wind caps off the 8-song Norihito Sumitomo streak at a low B tier, with just barely enough to stay out of the tier below. And that concludes the Norihito Sumitomo section, okay on average with a relative high point in Pathfinder. So, we've made it approximately halfway through the list with a whopping 33 songs ranked so far. I thought I'd give you a quick little break from the large chunks of main menu songs and talk about some of the songs that play in the other menus, stuff like the used car dealership and tuning shop. Technically, this means that there are more than 67 songs being ranked, but I need the funny number for the clicks, bro. So, we'll start off with the used car dealership theme, which plays this 20-second segment on loop. In fact, it's so short that I'll fit my entire review of it in that 20-second window. There's a nice bass melody here that holds the entire piece together and sounds really groovy on its own. Add the small guitar parts and it's a pretty nice piece, even if it is just a short loop. That's a solid B tier right there. Made it in time. The tuning shop also plays a similar 20-second loop in the background, but this time it's a lot more slappy. What I mean by that is that the main melody is performed by a flea-style slap bass complemented by an electric guitar and drums, and that's it. This whole composition is pretty simple on its surface, but that's what I like about it. I'll put it in B tier for the time being, while I recommend you another Gran Turismo song that's almost like a full version of the tuning shop theme. Are You Ready from GT5 Prologue sounds similar, which is a song I really like and also the length of a full song, so that's something you could check out. And of course, I couldn't miss Atava Curves, one of 2 pre-race songs in GT5 alongside Brickbot's remix of Baby by Panau. It's a banger house song that brings the energetic racing vibe back into things just in time for you to crash out at turn 1 of Tokyo R246 again. There's enough of a groove to keep you hooked throughout, but there's still a bit more to be desired out of this song. A low A tier will suffice for Atava Curves. Now it's time for the OG, GT Yado, and yes, I know this technically shouldn't count because it's an arrangement of Scott Joplin's The Entertainer played by Lang Lang, but it's different enough so I'll count it. Compared to the traditional way of being played, Lang Lang's version of The Entertainer is much more laid back with less of a consistent tempo. This is great as it allows the piece to flow and breathe in a sense, but the problem I have with this version of The Entertainer is that this professionalism vibe doesn't mesh well with the maintenance shop. GT Yado drinks your oil and yeets Chiron engines into your cars. A more jovial composition like the one in GT4 would fit a company like this better. So because of that, the GT Yado theme falls to a low B tier. And that's the miscellaneous menu songs ranked, so now let's return to our regularly scheduled programming. We're back in the jazz game with Ryo Sonoda and his sole contribution to the playlist Smoker's Lament. He's got a few albums released such as the absolute banger You and I, but his song, Smoker's Lament, is his only song on the playlist, making him, Shunji Suzuki, and the upcoming Akimasa Yamada the only artists here to only contribute one song, rather than multiple. That bit of trivia aside, Ryo wasn't sleeping on us with this singular offering. After that whole bunch of 19 songs by the same 2 artists, it really is refreshing to see something unique from this guy, because right off the bat, we're hit with some catchy keyboard chords and really great percussion. This song has already set itself apart from the other jazz songs on the soundtrack so far. What really holds this piece together are the drums specifically. Not only are they tightly composed, but the way they switch up the song's rhythm and pace through differing patterns adds so much to this piece. A guitar plays the main melody here. Nothing crazy, but it does its job well enough with the background instrumentation helping it along. What I want to focus on is the section at the 1 minute 25 second mark. The melody switches up and the guitar is joined by this weird little keyboard instrument that I'm not sure about the name of. It's quite groovy and provides some well needed substance. This whole song is a groove in and of itself. The part that follows immediately after adds this almost disco-esque guitar riff into the mix, complemented by a solo on the keyboard. Although this repetitive guitar riff can get a bit on the nerves if you listen to it for long enough, the keyboard part is good enough to make up for it somewhat. Then we transition into a section similar to what was just played, but taken to the next level as the weird instrument mentioned earlier goes up an octave, and keyboard chords are added in the background to spice things up. It offers a unique sonic evolution that manages to keep things things fresh. Smoker's Lament is actually a pretty good song, and far and away makes up for some of the lower ranking jazz songs, and that earns it a high A tier between Green Park and New Age. But don't smoke please, it's not cool. So you probably recognize Masahiro Ando if you've kept your ears focused while playing any GT game. He composed the series' main theme song, Moon Over the Castle, but he's probably more well known for being the former guitarist for jazz fusion band T-Square. They were the ones who made Truth, the Fuji TV F1 theme in Japan, and coming straight out of the T-Square zone for GT5's menu music is the band's longest tenured drummer, Satoshi Bandoh. Aside from literally performing on the soundtracks for Mario Kart 8 and World and maintaining his own solo career, he's been a contributor to Gran Turismo's OST for this game and 5 Prologue. He has the following 5 songs credited to him, with drum contributions on other songs like the previously mentioned Smoker's Lament, and seeing how strong the drums were in those songs, I have high hopes for him. So to start us off with this goated artist's contributions, we have Afterglow, a song that was later remade for his solo album Happy Life in 2011. Putting aside the overt freakiness this song displays, it actually slaps hard, no not like that. And immediately, we see Satoshi's style of jazz clear to see. It's more smooth and soulful with more electronic elements compared to the previous artists. It leans ever closer to the type of jazz fusion you'd recognize in racing games similar to Gran Turismo. The synth-led intro is complemented wonderfully by slower drums and some pad ambience in the background. That then transitions into a short piano interlude, then a sort of pre-chorus melody played by the sax. Like, it's actually so good, especially as the background instruments underscore the jazzy chord change in this section. Then it releases into the chorus melody, and oh my fucking god, I love it. Like, I don't even care about the freaky undertones in this song. It's all just so soulful and amazing, and like, oh my god. I always find myself singing this melody to myself. It's just that catchy and pleasing to the ear. All the instruments in this song line up and work together to create a beautiful soundscape. Every time you re-listen to this section, you can always focus on a specific instrument in the mix and find something cool about it. And as the chorus phrase repeats for the second time, there's another subtle chord change in the latter half, which makes it even more of an absolute banger. After another piano interlude, we go again with the parts mostly unchanged. I'll give it a pass this time because it's still so good even if we don't switch anything up. Plus it leads into a killer sax outro that serves as the delicious cherry on top of this jazz fusion sundae. You've been hearing all my glaze for this song. I mean, obviously it's an S tier, but there's an opportunity for us to go even higher. Remember how this song was remade for the Happy Life album? I can't play it for copyright reasons, but that version has an improvised sax section between the 2 choruses that I think would elevate it even higher than its already high placement. I recommend you listen to that version when you can, but don't expect the praise to end here. We're about to partake on a glazing streak not even matched by the likes of Krispy Kreme, because Satoshi is about to make it a 2 for 2 with his next song, Dark Line. It's another soulful jazz fusion dance similar to Afterglow, but somehow even better. We can already see the technical mastery on display at the start, where the opening lead pans between channels, moving from left ear to right ear as it plays. It's a simple effect, but as we're about to see, it's just another detail that helps this song reach true greatness. Programmed drums, a piano, and bass plucks lead into the main melody, which is also incredibly catchy, similar to Afterglow's. It transitions into the second section with a different instrument on the lead, which leads to this already nice mini climax after the 1 minute mark. Rinse and repeat, this time with added pad ambience and harmonization between the 2 previous leads. It works wonders in allowing this piece to progress after that first section. Then we have a little break, followed by a return to the earlier build-ups, still doing really great, and you'll notice the lick snuck in the background right here. Peak sound design, but all of it pales in comparison to this next part. I can't even find the words to describe how phenomenal it is, so let me just play it out. Oh my god, I actually love this part of the song so much, far beyond anything I could even put into words. But just the way it feels so cathartic to listen to easily makes it the highlight of the song. I don't even think I need to discuss the also pretty good outro of the song, because that previous part alone instantly brings Dark Line to the top. It's quite possibly the easiest S tier I've given out in this list, apart from one other song that surpasses this high. But like, holy shit, please listen to Dark Line. I actually love this song so much and you will not regret letting it grace your ears. Next up is a higher energy tune in Mesmerism. Basically, higher BPM and full-time drums while keeping the Bandoh style jazz fusion stuff, and you've got this song. And while this is a really good composition, it doesn't necessarily reach the heights of the previous two, so let me explain. The synth lead melody in this song, while nice and catchy, isn't as nice and catchy compared to the previously mentioned songs. Plus, there's not much in terms of structure here, aside from a small section that I'll address soon. As I mentioned, the jazz fusion elements are here to help this piece, since I love this style of jazz so much. There's the pad ambience, harmonization on the main melody, and plenty of more synth stuff to go around. But probably the highlight of Mesmerism is the section that starts at that 1 minute 30-second mark, where we get a small break, then a transition into this little part. This one bit always sounds really nice and gives off real flying vibes, definitely something that works in the context of GT menus. Aside from that though, this isn't really an S tier song, but I would be lying if I said that this didn't deserve at least an A tier placement just above South Swing. So now let's slow things down a bit with, well, slow on the uptake. It's a slower, more laid back piece, but it still possesses its own classy groove, offering proofs that Satoshi can do chill songs like this. A primarily electronic composition with programmed drums, synths, and the like similar to Dark Line, this song starts off pretty nicely. Take a groovy lead, add a bass in these jazzy chords, transition into the main part with a cymbal riser, and you've got yourself the fairly effective intro to this song. It's also got this catchy keyboard and piano melody that almost brings back the lick we saw in Dark Line. From there, it goes into this other section that also sounds really good. The changing chords and the synth backbone in this part help it stand out. Sadly though, slow on the uptake doesn't reach the highs of the first two songs. The drums are a bit weak in this piece and there still isn't much progression aside from those two section switch ups. But still, it's a nice soothing tune that offers a groovy experience to the listener, so it can go an A tier below Mesmerism in these other two songs. And finally, wrapping up Satoshi Bandoh's fire contributions to this game is Smooth Talking, a song with a similar laid back sound to Slow on the Uptake. And I've gotta say, while I prefer his more bombastic compositions like Afterglow and Dark Line, Smooth Talking continues to prove that Satoshi's still good at more relaxed songs. The jazzy synth intro transitions well into the main motif, with Satoshi's drums, an electronic bass, and subtle appearances by the guitar and background synths helping to keep a soulful rhythm. Add the sax into the mixture and it turns into a pretty nice and chill jazz piece for peak slow head bobbing action. There's a subtle progression in here as small details are added while the song runs. A small pause at around the 1 minute 30 seconds mark manages to switch up the pace while not disrupting the flow too much. And after that pause, the sax and synth combine to harmonize the main melody beautifully. There's also a bridge after that offering an extended synth solo that's already pretty great on its own. Not only that, it just meshes well with the background instrumentation and manages to pull off a perfect transition back into the main motif. Except, the outro here does away with the melody at the beginning and sees a sort of duel between the synth and sax that sounds really nice and culminates into a sax synth combination ending that wraps everything together pretty nicely. It's almost as if they're talking smoothly. So good for us, Satoshi leaves us with another certified banger. It'll sit above the previous two songs in A tier, right on the cusp of S tier, because while this song is really good, I do wish it had a slightly stronger first half. And that means of the 5 songs we've covered, Dark Line and Afterglow are the best in S tier, while the others are not too far behind in A tier. I think it's safe to say that Satoshi Bandoh absolutely cooked for this soundtrack. But hold on, our next artist, Yudai Sato, isn't much of a slouch either in terms of musical contributions. Similar to Satoshi Bandoh previously, he contributed to GT5 Prologue's soundtrack before making these 4 songs for the main GT5. And all of them are really good as well, so let's just dive right in. Yes, more chill jazz. The title fits too. Gently, the moon always watches you. How serene. So GT Maui, despite its laid-back production and nearly 5 minutes of runtime, has enough good elements to constitute a really great song. The rhythm guitar here actually kind of fits well in this atmosphere, giving this song its own unique chill vibe. Plus, the piano lead here is nice as well. It's catchy on its own and is complemented well by these keyboard details and pads in the background. But where I think this song succeeds in its laid-back vibe is the fact that it still manages to progress with its structure. Because after the verse melody, it transitions into a more strongly piano-centric pre-chorus that has a smoothly composed piano part manifesting in this lick that I personally can't get enough of. Then it goes into a short peak that adds pads and a higher lead into the frame, masterfully providing something to latch onto. But the piano still takes up most of the spotlight here, because after that we get this piano outro with these interesting descending chords, and it also gets a solo entirely to itself with even more smooth improvisational parts that add to the character of the piece. Then repeat the previous section again and you've got a nice 5-minute jazz song. Personally though, I prefer more energetic jazz fusion-esque stuff like the 2 Satoshi songs that got their way into S tier. So while it won't go all the way up there, Gently the Moon Always Watches You earns its spot in A tier above Smooth Talking. Okay, I probably should have mentioned this earlier, but the aforementioned GT Maui is a bit of an outlier. Unlike Satoshi Bandoh, who had a good mix of high energy and low energy songs, the one we just covered is the only laid back Yudai Sato song, because as we get into our next entry, Get On, we're back to pure swingy high energy. We start off with this wonderful drum intro, then we're immediately thrown into a more bluesy style of jazz with piano, guitars, a catchy bass line, and even some organ thrown in for good measure. The piano melody here is positively quirky when combined with all these background elements. It creates something that absolutely screams Gran Turismo funkiness. It also brings real tuning shop vibes, which is a song that already scored relatively well, so let's just see how this other semi-full version of that song goes. And also, make sure to take note of this part. Because you will hear it again in this piece. But anyway, after this, we go into an almost minute-long guitar solo that I just absolutely love for some reason. It fits in really well with the rest of the piece and brings it that extra bit of charm that keeps me hooked with this song. And I'm not alone in liking it. I found this really underrated cover of the solo with less than 1,000 views that you should definitely check out. That aside, back to the OG song. After all that comes a more held back piano solo that contrasts well with the guitar part while still offering something of its own. Following a retreat to the main phrase, we arrive at the outro, which wraps everything up beautifully. Remember that part I told you about earlier? The outro takes that to a higher level, building it up and releasing it to great effect at the end. It's actually such a great song that does deserve the praise it gets. It'll get a relatively low spot in S tier, but hey, an S tier is an S tier. There's always that one song you find in an album, playlist, game, anywhere. The one special song that, once it starts playing, becomes the star of the show and puts pretty much everything else to shame. If you couldn't already tell, this next entry, Nightbirds, is one of those special songs. First and foremost, it literally is special. This piece, along with one more we'll get to soon, plays as one of the 2 songs that make up GT5's premium dealership music. But the second reason that I call it special is that it's just such an amazing song. I'm not sure how I could describe why I love it so much with just my words, but stay with me as I make my best attempt to describe it all, starting now. Nightbirds gets off to an immediate no-nonsense start, jumping straight into action with most of the instruments playing on the get-go. It sets up this nice piano melody that always gets stuck in my head, especially with its change of chords in the latter half of the part, and the lead instrument switches to this high synth lead the second go around, helping to balance things out a bit. Then we get to the next part, a sax lead build up to a climax that I already really love, even if it doesn't reach its full potential yet, as we'll see later. The way the chords build up all the tension leading to the release just gives me so many good feelings whenever I put on headphones and listen closely. After that, a more laid back section takes place, not only helping with the pacing of the song, but also allowing us to get the best of both worlds in terms of energy. It slowly returns to its main pace as the sax plays a solo, the drums return, and the bass goes absolutely wild. We return into full swing with the whole song once again going crazy hard as all the instruments play their own respective parts, right with their own little details that all combine to make something sublime. Then comes the absolute best part. We see a return to the build-up section we've seen before, but with so much more to bring it almost to perfection. Just like before, I'll let it play out in its entirety so you can see what's so special about it. Words simply cannot express how much I love this part, neither can they explain my love for the whole piece. Not only do we get that simply amazing part, but we come out of it with a key change that perfectly plays off the huge release that came immediately before. With all the instruments combined together and the use of the main melodies slightly modified, Nightbirds' outro finishes the whole thing off beautifully. You know, I'm sorry if I came off as corny in this segment, or if I said some music things that would piss off actual music theorists who know way more than I do. Truth Truth be told, no matter how much I repeat myself or info dump for hours on end, I may never be able to truly express how much this piece means to me. To think that a song as close to perfection as possible to me came from this, a racing game almost old enough to legally drive here in the States, it's hardly fathomable. But it did, luckily for me and for all of us. And after all this, we must remember to place it on our humble tier list. Of course, it belongs in the very top of S tier, a deserving spot for quite possibly the greatest song ever made for Gran Turismo, behind only a select few compositions. So I might have gotten a bit sidetracked with that last entry. We still have 25 more songs to cover on this list, and while it would have been nice for that previous song to wrap up the jazz section, there's still one more, The Power of GT. Can this one live up to the expectations and get into S tier as well? Our answer begins where this song begins, with these uplifting synth chords set to the role of hi-hats. Already off to a great start, then we're hit with the main part, a syncopated melody set to joyful background instrumentation. Not even 10 seconds in and The Power of GT is already showing its, well, power. To add on to all of that, we still have yet to get to our lead melody. It's a unique guitar lead that sets this song apart from many of the others on the list. Just like Get On before, this song has its own covers that I think you should check out. And the chords that lead out of the part are also really groovy, allowing for a seamless buildup of tension that works incredibly well in this piece in particular. And might I also mention just the drums in this piece in general, they work really well in keeping the song's unique rhythm. After that comes this refrain that sports this incredibly catchy lead part, complemented beautifully by the background instrumentation, culminating into a climax and continued with yet another wonderful part. There, a vibraphone joins the mix, providing a nice harmony with the guitar. Then comes the guitar solo, which provides even more to benefit the song. The Power of GT has already cooked extremely hard and we're barely even halfway through. The song repeats this again to fill up its 4 minutes and 11 seconds of runtime while providing more progression, especially in the aforementioned build-up. All this being said, it's yet another phenomenal song and one that's definitely worthy of praise. And that means we've got a third consecutive S tier for The Power of GT. Dude, if Satoshi Bandoh cooked with his part of the soundtrack, where do we even start with Yudai Sato? 3 S tiers in a row plus the best song on the list is crazy work, and I applaud him for his talents here. And thankfully, that means we finished off the jazz section on a high note, 29 songs and plenty of bangers within. What more could you ask for? So we're now in lounge territory with the remaining 24 songs. Akimasa Yamada kicks us off with the one song they contributed. I couldn't really find much about their work outside of Gran Turismo sadly, but they did return to compose another song for Gran Turismo 6. Before their singular contribution to this playlist, we got Lotus and Dam. This song gives us a peek at the slower side of the lounge section with the slower tempo and a more electronic sound design. And it's a good song, might I add. Set choices work well for establishing this piece's atmosphere. The guitars in here also do wonders for this song, from the main guitar melody introduced at the beginning to the small rhythm played during the vibraphone solo section. But while it sounds great at surface level and I vibe heavily with it, there still isn't much to Lotus and Dam that helps it stick out. There's little to no progression or interesting parts. Really, there's a lack of anything to make this song truly unique. It'll just get a reasonably placed B tier while we move on to our next artist. The next artist in question is Ana Yamada, which I assume refers to this musician with some releases out and who's apparently still playing shows throughout Japan, but there are plenty of Ana Yamadas out there, so I might be wrong. Whoever this artist is, the next 2 songs are credited to them and we're about to rank both. Of course, this first song's title, 4 chords, is a reference to how the guitar melody has a total of more than 4 chords, so that was a fucking lie. That pure misinformation aside, the titular 4+ chords sound really good, especially when played on the guitar and with the background instrumentation. And the sound design here is even better than Lotus and Dam, with the 4 on the floor drum pattern, catchy keyboard and string parts, and the aforementioned guitar holding it all together. I haven't even mentioned the funky bass part yet, but it really nicely complements the song's chord progression and adds plenty of detail to the lower end of the song. Essentially, all the parts here have something going for them, and all this makes 4 chords such a vibe if I'm being honest. While this song has been tainted a bit by its overplaying in the menus for Gran Turismo 7, allowing myself to listen to the whole thing in its original context allows me to see that that 4 chords is actually a really good song. So of course, it can go up into A tier. It could have been an S tier if it somehow managed to extract more out of what it already does well. After all, this song is still under 3 minutes long, but you could still argue that this is great enough as is. On the other hand, The Hat Flew Away by Wind is quite a bit weaker in comparison to its sibling that we just covered. It starts off interestingly enough with this horn-led almost bossa nova intro, but after that's done, the song starts to fall apart a bit. I'm not a huge fan of the following section, where the more natural percussion and melody that I actually kinda liked in the intro goes to the sidelines to be replaced by this ho-hum electronic part. To be fair, it does have the energy and some interesting parts on the synths, but the lack of percussion in this section does bring the whole song down for me. It does get slightly better after this as the main melody and percussion return, albeit with the former changing up a bit and the latter actually improving by a lot. So while there are good parts near the end, I'm still a bit let down by that previous disappointing section. Plus, I still don't find this song that appealing. There are definitely better lounge songs in this list that I would much rather revisit. And because of that, The Hat Flew Away by Wind gets a C tier, creating a dichotomy of one pretty good and one just okay on a Yamada song. So now, we've got KEMMEI ADACHI, who's credited in-game as simply KEMMEI. Alongside another artist here that we'll get to soon, he takes up a good portion of the lounge section with 5 songs contributed to the menus, and he's done work for various other PlayStation games such as Loco Roco and Astrobot. Cool stuff. Oh my god guys, I love gambling and money and gambling. 99% of something's quit before something else happens. 300 Gran Turismo $1 million jackpot, baby! Is the vibe I receive from this next song Casino Drive. I mean, the title's a hint, but it's led by a rich upright bass and triangle that calls me towards that slot machine. One pole separates me from riches, just one more pole, bro. Okay, I'll stop with the gambling now. This whole song's such a vibe, with those elements I mentioned earlier all making this piece really catchy and interesting. Not to mention, there's a sax part that adds a bit of well-needed jazziness to this song. It gets even better in the section after this, as the bass fades in with this cool effect and we get a surprise return of the organ, all combining to make up a smooth transition. Add in some flute and trumpet solos for a wonderfully quirky jazz piece that isn't actually labeled as jazz. Like, why did they call this lounge? Anyway, all of this earns Casino Drive a well-deserved A tier. Keep gambling, you'll hit the jackpot eventually. So similar to Yudai Sato's Nightbirds earlier, the next song has another special playing condition in the menus. KEMMEI's Dream World is the theme for Gran Turismo 5's Course Maker, being the only song to play in the background while creating your course. Completely unrelated, but Polyphony, please remake the GT6 course editor and my life is yours. There's a pretty cool synth melody at the start using some interesting chords that some music theorists out there could probably dissect, and the way the song builds as percussion and piano are added into the mix perfectly sets up the main part, led by another funky bass line. While it stays stagnant with this part for a bit, it all leads to this string-led section that just sounds so good, especially as the aforementioned bass slices through the mix effortlessly. I really just wish there was more of it. It takes up so little time in this more than 4-minute long composition. And yeah, Dream World could reach so close to S tier if it had more beyond that. After the section that I just mentioned, the song stays essentially locked to this one phrase, all leading to a serviceable at best outro. It never really gets anywhere near as interesting as that string part, which I'd say is probably the song's main highlight. In short, I wish this song could do way more with what it sets up, but even still, the good parts in Dream World bring it to A tier. Just don't tell the Australians about the name of the song. So, Liberty. It's certainly one of the songs ever made for Gran Turismo 5. I mean, going purely off of views from Beatburst's uploads, this is the most popular song on the list, being the only one to reach 1 million views. And in my head, it's essentially the type specimen for GT5 menu music, the song that appears first when I think of that concept. But at the same time, it's still pretty generic when it comes to songs in this list. Like, imagine Dream World without its unique aspects while keeping its repetitiveness, and you've got Liberty. And unlike Casino Drive, it doesn't even have the funny haha gambling aspect to it. This song does close to the bare minimum in terms of being nice to listen to. The synth lead melody is catchy enough to be listenable, but not interesting enough to stand out at all to me. Like everything else here, it stays mostly the same for the song's over 4 minutes of runtime and would really benefit from some changing up. Like, the only major shift in this song occurs at the 2 minutes and 15 seconds mark, and it's still extremely short and does very little to progress the song. And it's at around the halfway point, so you still have half a song to sit through. There are small details here that save Liberty a bit. Above the programmed drum rhythm and various other electronic elements here, there are some more natural details such as muted guitar strums and bongos in the background, but they can't really do much in this song in particular. popular. So yeah, Liberty definitely doesn't deserve to be the most popular GT5 mini music track. That title belongs more to something like Nightbirds or Darkline. And in terms of its ranking, high C tier. Need I say more? Attention people who played Roblox in the late 2010s. If any of you played Car Crushers 2 while it was in beta, this segment is for you and also for me personally to infodump, because this next song, Like a Bird, used to be the theme for Car Crushers 2's dealership back in the beta. That and its association with Gran Turismo, of course, are pretty much how I've grown attached to the song over the years. But talking about the actual content of Like a Bird, I'm proud to announce that it's yet another certified banger. You heard the song earlier in the intro of this video, and for a good reason. It starts off immediately with the fire synth lead melody and a neat chord progression. As the percussion kicks in with the classic 4 on the floor house pattern and the bass has another Dreamworld-esque part, it's almost impossible not to at least headbang slightly to the song gracing your ears. Plus, it isn't as much of a drag like Liberty, because Like a Bird has sections in between the main parts while still integrating elements to progression outside them. While yes, these two are house songs, a genre that uses plenty of repetition, what I just mentioned makes up the difference in quality between the two. For example, the 1 minute and 5 seconds mark in the latter brings this cool little break from the main phrase that sounds really great with its own higher melody. After that, just before the 2-minute mark, the percussion takes a break to highlight this string-led part, and in between all these sections, at least one new instrument is added to the main part to keep things fresh. After another interlude that keeps the synth lead while stripping back everything else, we transition seamlessly with these chords into the other amazing string section in the outro. What makes Like a Bird so good in comparison to the previous song is how it mixes its innate repetitiveness with unique parts, offering a nice contrast and flow. It all really helps to end this song on a high note and makes it so much more enjoyable to listen to. I might be blinded by nostalgia, to be completely honest, but I know that even without that nostalgia factor, this song absolutely deserves its spot in S tier. So I probably can't say the name of this song lest I invoke the wrath of 1,000 suns, but the last KEMMEI track on this list does a nice job at wrapping his part up. The intro doesn't seem like much at first, mostly just using this bell melody to some sparse percussion. The real song starts at the 36-second mark where things get pretty spicy. A signature KEMMEI style bass part joins the mix as the drums kick in. The bell melody also changes into a much catchier part. The bass then proceeds to take up the majority of the main part, taking over the soundscape with the funky melody that I really like. There's that and the higher energy drums juxtaposed with the more chill background elements which utilize the same bell melody and plenty of pads, offering layers of complexity to the song. The middle part is held together by a pretty good bridge. With the synth lead taking over and percussion switching up to great effect, this section successfully provides a much welcomed change of pace. The outro section afterwards completes the sonic progression by adding new leads on top of the already pretty good main part. All of these elements are surprisingly great and make this piece way more enjoyable to listen to than I thought it would be going in. So the song earns a really good A tier. While it's no S tier, we've wrapped up KEMMEI's relatively good section with an appropriately high placement for his last GT5 song, Sorry about that. Anyway, Maki Minami. She's done a bunch of other work in composition and sound design, including for this mobile game called Break My Kit. Wait, is that Isamu Ohira? So here's a really fun fact about the upcoming song, My Favorite Wings. In the photo mode scene, Red Bull Hangar 7, the building interior has this very song playing in the background. You know, cause Red Bull gives you wings. But how's the song outside of that? It's okay, I guess. While it starts off good enough with the bass and keyboard in the first few seconds, the main song completely abandons that for an electronic heavy main part. I'm kinda put off by this because said part in question is somewhat empty and lackluster, and I probably would have preferred a full song more similar to the first few seconds. But whatever, let's just see how the song goes from there. There's an organ added at around the 1 minute 4 seconds mark that actually saves this song a bit. The part kinda slaps. It does all sorts of cool things with the melody throughout its playtime that spices up an otherwise boring song, and bonus points for the guitar in the background during the latter half of this section. But even still, My Favorite Wings is just under 3 minutes in length, and aside from that organ is a pretty bland song. So with all that, it only manages a C tier at best. I couldn't find a good transition out of this segment, so I figured you should know that I once used this song as background music for a school video project I edited in 10th grade. I'll let you guess that's what it was for. Luckily, there's an improvement with Spin Your Own Wheels, a very small improvement, but an improvement nonetheless. I say this because there are more interesting choices here that could open the doors for a really great song, but in practice lead to something just okay. Introducing the song as an interesting sounding buzzy saw synth with a catchy rhythm to it. It leads into a main part led by harmonizing saxophones that also sound nice. So far, not much to complain about, but even if these parts are good, the rest of the song just kinda exists. It's not outright boring, but Spin Your Own Wheels does feel like background music and nothing more. Even if there's a complex drum rhythm and a subtle bass line in here, both providing good harmony, everything's all situated in a song that does very little outside of what it introduces, so it lands above its sibling in a higher C tier, making up the other half of an alright 2-song collection from Akita Manabe. But if you want to check out a really good GT song from her, like actual S tier material, listen to Enter the Rainbow Gate from GT6, you won't regret it. Alright, who's up next? Let me just read the script. Wait, fucking Makoto? The D&B producer signed to Hospital Records? Yeah, apparently Makoto contributed a bunch of music for Tourist Trophy, GT5 Prologue, GT5, and GT6. Here in the Big 5, he's brought an appropriate 5 tracks to the table, but sadly none of them are D&B. We'll have to wait until 6's race playlist for some classic drum and bass tunes. But while we're here, let's talk about After the Rain. Alongside Nightbirds, After the Rain makes up the 2 songs played in the premium car dealership, and it's quite possibly another one of the most nostalgic GT5 songs to me personally, seeing as the average playthrough involves plenty of dealership visits. But either way, compared to Makoto's other songs here, After the Rain is definitely the most jazz influenced, scrapping the electronic elements for jazz instrumentation closer to some of the prior jazz songs on the list. And what we get from all this is such a chill vibe that's kinda hard for me to describe. Simply put, the way the piano, drums, and bass are put together in the intro creates something really soothing, especially in context throughout the various dealership menus. The main melody on the vibraphone is somewhat underwhelming on its own, but I can give it a pass because it's only the main focus for some portions of the song. It alternates the main part between various other instruments, which allows it to act as a sort of intermediate between the other more complex sections. Speaking of other sections, After the Rain's got plenty of them, and pretty much all of them are worth acknowledging in some form. 53 seconds in, this little piano rhythm is introduced. Not only does it help with the flow of the song after the intro, but it's reintroduced as a pretty effective backbone for many of the other parts later in the song. After returning to the main phrase, it goes into another part where the piano is joined by another simple guitar part, transitioning into the peak of the song, decorated with pads and other small details like wind chimes and drum breaks. The entirety of After the Rain strikes a near perfect balance of repetition and complexity to create its defining chill vibe. None of the individual parts are 10 out of 10 amazing on their own, but when combined into a larger piece, they all make up a phenomenal song. So just like its dealership partner, Nightbirds, After the Rain achieves the well-deserved S tier. Although it's nowhere on the same level as that other dealership song, Makoto's first offering gives us a wonderful first impression. But does he follow up with the next song, Believe? I believe so. Nah, just kidding, this one's mid. Okay, I don't want to be that harsh right out the gate, so let's give this song an actual chance. I guess you could say those opening chords are a little interesting in that they do lead into a nice chill part. That I will give to this song. On the surface, there are good elements here. For me, the percussion is what sticks out, and there is a bit of sonic progression with some pads and stuff added as the song continues. But the problem, to me at least, is again, Believe is just too boring, because it stays mostly within the opening chords introduced at the beginning, apart from one isolated section at the start. It could work, but in this song, it just leads to the whole thing absolutely dragging hard. And all that leads to a piece that could be great, but has just never really grown on me due to it being so unadventurous. And so, its good elements can't save it from falling to a high D tier. Here's another fun fact, this time about Boogie Back. I found the exact GarageBand loop used as the main bass line throughout the song. Behold. Small trivia aside, Boogie Back is a more energetic Makoto song led by the funky bass loop I just played to you, and it's just such a fucking vibe, but this time as an incredibly danceable funky house song rather than a chill jazz piece like After the Rain, because on top of the banger bass line, plucks, and bouncy drum part, there are some fun synth chords that help with the quirky atmosphere of the song. Combine that with this almost disco string melody and you've got a piece that's such a massive joy to listen to. And although there's still not much in terms of structure for this song, having using no sections to break this rhythm, I still find the surface level sound fun enough to where it doesn't really matter. So Boogie Back can still manage a high B tier placement. Not exactly a perfect song, but an incredibly fun and memorable one nonetheless. The remaining two Makoto songs are both pretty similar, being primarily electronic songs somewhere around house territory. Either way, the first of those two, Journey to the One, ain't half bad. I could start off by focusing on the rather interesting chords that somehow work surprisingly well, but what sorta carries this song, mostly the intro, is the juicy deep bass supporting the composition. Although there are good elements elsewhere in Journey to the One, that bass and keyboard combo works wonders for it and is what I'd say defines the whole song. Speaking of the other elements in the song, they're good too. Not as good as some other parts, but good nonetheless. This whole song is pretty strong in its sound design, and on top of that, it's pretty structurally sound with plenty of different sections to keep you hooked. Returning to the bass in this piece, its changing rhythm and melody as the song progresses work really well in keeping its structure. For example, it's more continuous and pitch shifty in the intro before transitioning into a short decay single note pattern, then into one with a longer decay, all while switching up its melody. It all brings plenty of well-needed depth that other more samey songs could benefit from. However, the sound design isn't really as appealing to my taste as the other high-placing Makoto songs like After the Rain or Boogie Back. It is good, but not as unique or interesting as those two. But since Journey to the One is carried by the good elements, bass especially, it can earn another B tier below Boogie Back. Completing the transport-related titles from Journey to the One is the next and last Makoto song here, The Trip. No bass yet, but it starts off with some transcendent pads and classic house percussion, hi-hats and all. Add in the piano and oh hey, there's the bass. Returning at the 1 minute mark, the bass comes in to support the whole song yet again, this time in sub-bass flavor. While not on the same level of quality as Journey to the One's bass, it still does a pretty good job at making this piece even more nice to listen to. But yeah, if I'm being honest, The Trip is just Journey to the One but a bit weaker. Apart from the more interesting dark sound design and this wind melody, everything in the former is a small downgrade. It's not as interesting structurally, staying within the same few lanes with its sections, nor are there any cool chords or melodies at play. That does mean that I'm not as likely to revisit it compared to that song, but it's not completely devoid of good elements. Whereas Journey to the One was more bass defined, the tight percussion in The Trip is what sticks out to me the most. There's just some part of me that loves syncopated house hi-hats like in this song. They add plenty of texture and grooviness to a composition, so it's not too far off from the previous songs, placing in the middle of B tier. And that means Makoto signs off with a pretty good output, all things considered. You definitely should check out his D&B tunes in GT6, and also just check out the rest of his discography in general. He has a song on Hospital called Trial Mountain. Notice any resemblance there? That song's also in the other game series, so there's a cool connection between the two. But now, we're at the home stretch. Only 3 artists are left to cover, all with 3 songs each. And we'll kick it off with Tetsuya Yamada, aka Time in Gran Turismo 5. He's done a bunch of work for stuff including various car promos and an hour-long album featuring the aforementioned Maki Manami in one of the songs. Starting us off with this artist is A Slowly Day, which, if I'm being honest, isn't my cup of tea. It's a shame because I can see where this song is trying to go. There's a bell melody on the intro, but it's a bit on the drawn out side and tends to get boring after a bit. But it's unique in that it has vocals, except no singing, just vocal chops snuck in the background, which I guess helps add detail to the song, but they all play one unchanging note while they're present. If there are other positives I can find, it's that there's a nice string part that has some good chords. That part pretty much holds together a Slowly Day sound design, adding a bit of soul to an otherwise pretty boring song. I don't really like this song that much, and I'm still a bit unsure as to why exactly. Is A Slowly Day too slow? Too empty? Are its melodies and or chords too grating? I can't assign a main problem to it, so I'll just say that it's a combination of these issues. That brings this song to a high D tier, ultimately making it a pretty forgettable track on this nearly 70 song list. Now for Calm Calm, Time's next song, and yep, the title checks out. This is a pretty calm song, but unlike the other calm stuff that have come before, Calm Calm is a type of calm to come calm you down with cool calm electronic design. But outside of that, is it any good? Well, it's better than A Slowly Day, that's for sure. For one, it's a bit more of a vibe with this chill sound design. It leans more towards downtempo compared to the more natural bossa nova seen in songs like Apollo and East Avenue. It shows with the various atmospheric sounds throughout, like the backbone synth lead and more laid back percussion. And there's also plenty of details throughout the composition that enhance the soundscape and make things more listenable. And in the second part of Calm Calm, we get a switch up that adds a string section and a change in melody to help spice things up and assist with the song's progression. It's good enough for what it sets out to do, but then again, it's still got plenty of weaknesses. For one, even if it is supposed to be a slower downtempo song, song, it feels like it's in a weird middle ground between soothingly chill like East Avenue and unbearably slow like Apollo. Although lying around either of those 2 points could have their own appeal, how calm is placed between the two denies the benefits of either and feels awkward personally. Plus, these arpeggio parts, while cool on paper, distract from the laid back vibe by being too loud and clear. They fill up too much of the soundscape and drown out the other chill elements that were already doing fine. But I think that many of my grievances with this song can probably boil down to me simply preferring something different in terms of energy for these menu songs. So it's good enough to earn a B tier, but still no surprises. Finally, let me see your mind wraps up Time's portion of the list with a more nebulous to describe song. Maybe it's house because of the 4x4 kicks and repetitive bass, but the genre police could probably get on my ass for saying this, so the house label definitely applies most to the first half of the song, which actually kinda slaps. There's the percussion and bass as I mentioned earlier, but also the pads that help with the futuristic vibe of the song. Unfortunately, it's also a bit boring to listen to for a minute and a half of the song's runtime with very little change from within. The second part, however, is much more freeform, being introduced by this transcendent percussionless break, which then transforms the 4x4 pattern into a less restrictive drum pattern. But once again, what good parts this section does have are brought down by its sheer lack of anything to switch up the already stagnant melody. So while the sound design bangs hard in the song, it is still a bit held back in terms of structural variety. It can still go into B tier for the time being, concluding Time's okay contributions. Now, Yuki Oike. Outside of Gran Turismo, he's got some tracks out on SoundCloud and has done music production work for clients such as Greene. But back on Gran Turismo, his song Globe shows us the more experimental side of lounge that we'll see plenty of in this last part of the video. Right off the bat, I really like what the intro offers. The ambient pads and freeform percussion here are wonderfully classy and a joy to listen to. It all goes into a wind lead melody, which is pretty serviceable. Not much for or against it in my opinion, it just does its job and that's okay. It's interspersed with the guitar-piano combination part that pretty nicely offers a contrast from that wind melody. After another go around, the percussion is removed in a break section that assists greatly in pacing the song. Plus, that part goes into a jazzy keyboard solo that I also really like. In terms of the song's weaknesses, most of it lies from its lack of anything truly phenomenal. It's good enough, but I wish for more. More of the keyboard solo, more progression from this main melody. Only then could this song be the one to break into the top 2 tiers. But a high B tier isn't too bad for this song. Dude, oh my god, I didn't even expect to like this so much coming into the list, but Yuki Oike's song Passion is quite a positive surprise in terms of quality, because it's actually a really good song worthy of mountains of praise. It already starts off really nicely by jumping straight into action with a more uplifting and vibe-filled sound design. And judging by the high tier songs on the list, you know I like me some danceable grooves in this mini music playlist. This energy stays with the song as it goes into the first part with a slightly sparse main melody, but with the high energy percussion part remaining in the background. The bass in the song so far also makes some well needed contributions to the really nice vibe of the whole piece. But we're not even there for long, because just after the 1 minute mark, we're sent into a completely new part that subverts the repetitiveness of the many previous songs. The rhythm is broken for a small interlude led by these chimes, and it transitions out of that into an extremely catchy keyboard part that combines juicy chords and a jazzy rhythm to create something that effectively bridges 2 parts while maintaining the energy. Did I mention that Yuki Oike managed to make that transition work with the fucking record scratch? Dude, you didn't even have to do that, but for some reason I really love that you did. That one detail elevates this section even further, and it somehow gets even better after that. Another cool transition sound is used, leading into a new melody that just sounds so good out the gate. It's absolutely dripping with soul and personality, with great chords sweetened by the bass and plenty of sonic details. And it all leads up to this little guitar solo that almost acts as the cherry on top of this wonderfully composed song. It perfectly encapsulates the release and energy after building up for nearly 2 minutes and seals the deal for this piece. Like, how did I not notice all this earlier? Passion is an amazing song with so much to unpack, and it definitely deserves to be way more popular, especially compared to stuff like Liberty. In fact, I might want to pull out the big U word here, but seeing that this song still does receive praise in upload comments, I'm not sure if I can. But regardless, Passion's a subversively awesome song that finally sees the grandeur of S tier above the other 2 lounge songs in that tier so far. Then, to wrap things up with our penultimate artist, it's Wind. Not to be confused with Winds by Norihito Sumitomo, Wind Navigator by Teroma Koshida, I Like Eating Rats, Must Have Been the Wind. While it's not super amazing like Passion, Wind does have elements to it that emulate some of the previous songs' various strengths. Its intro is pretty okay, but what what I want to focus on most is the main part. It's what gives this song most of its vibe with the upbeat drums, atmospheric pads, and small details throughout. Although it could benefit from an actual melody in this section, it kinda works as is. Then, after another more peaceful interlude like those in the previous two songs, we're led into the latter half of Wind. It possesses a more clear melody in the vibraphone as it returns from the intro to play a solo that adds flavor to the part. But you know what happens after all this praise. This song isn't perfect. The lack of a tangible melody for one does make this song less catchy and memorable. On top of that, many of the parts start to get pretty stale and repetitive. There's already the first section going on mostly unchanged for a minute and a half, but also when you remove the chimes from the second part, it just turns into almost the same thing as the first part, which doesn't help Wind's already draggy nature all too much. It would be nice to have more areas of progression in this section, so while this song is indicative of Yuki Oike's interesting style that hits its stride with his second song, ultimately Wind's structural issues landed in B tier. TLDR, Passion is actually so good, please listen to it. And now, we've reached the final artist on our list, Tokyo-based Yutbunit. He's got a few EPs released and plenty of DJ performances available to watch online. And for Gran Turismo 5, he composed these 3 lounge songs, the final 3 in our list. Hello, welcome back to Counting Beats with Lumi. Today we're going to be counting I give up with this one. So my first thoughts about Cubic Luster come with its extremely interesting time signature. Following in the footsteps of City Circuit, Cubic Luster starts out with an already irregular time signature of 6/4, a whole extra beat from Daisuke's song like an hour ago. But what makes it really interesting is that this isn't constant throughout the song, unlike City Circuit. Although it stays in 6/4 for the entire first part and interlude, the second part alternates its time signature rather effectively and smoothly for a song like this. By the second part, Cubic Luster alternates between 6/4, 5/4, and 7/4 time signatures, and the way it's pulled off is really smooth and seamless. It's almost hard to notice unless you specifically count the beats. I would know, I didn't even notice it myself until a while back when I did start counting the beats. But yeah, this all shows plenty of compositional mastery that makes this song an absolute wonder to listen to. And distracted by all the talk about time signatures, I haven't even mentioned the actual sound of the song. It's pretty good. It has an oh so beloved 4 on the floor pattern for the kicks, or is it 6 on the floor, 5 on the floor? Does the irregular time signature even allow me to put it around the house area similar to songs like Let Me See Your Mind? I'm getting distracted again. What I can say for now is that the synths here do some great work. Their rhythmic part in the background nicely emphasizes the however many on the floor beat, while the pads add a touch of well appreciated flair into the section. All this energy continues into the second section as the time signatures do their thing and string synths and a piano are added, and it all wraps up in a free-form piano outro, providing a memorable sign-off for a truly unique song. Even without all the time signature fuckery and Cubic Luster, it already could have gotten an A tier, but Yudo's effective experimentation in this sector is what manages to push it into the ultra-exclusive S tier among other masterfully crafted songs. Yutbunit brings us another experimental lounge song in Exponential Timeline, which is certainly a title that means something, but fortunately, it's still a really good song. Whether it lives up to Cubic Luster's high standards, we're about to see. Both Cubic Luster and this song have their own cool signature appeal that bring me to each respective song. For Cubic Luster, it's the time signature fuckery I wouldn't stop yapping about, and for Exponential Timeline, it's the rather unique cello melody that supports the song, alongside some secondary strings, but the main melody is piano first and foremost. Although this means that the defining cello loses a bit of the spotlight, I can excuse it a bit since it does sound nice. Complemented by another 4x4 kick pattern and some free cymbal work, the instrumentation as a whole is a huge strength for this song. After a short interlude, we're led into the second part that switches up the piano melody while keeping some other parts like the percussion and background strings, but this time the cello manages to join in on a specific part alongside the piano, giving some much needed attention to the song's selling point. But is Exponential Timeline good enough for S tier? Maybe not. It's not as crazy as something like Cubic Luster from a composition standpoint, being fully in 4/4. Plus, the cello definitely needs a bit more integration if it wants to be part of a truly great piece. Exponential Timeline is still definitely an A tier track in spite of those flaws, but now we've finally made it. More than 60 unique songs have been covered, more than an hour of me yapping about these silly songs, and we're at the final one. Say hello to Yutbunit's Xth Avenue. What can this song do to wrap up this extremely packed list? Being yet another song titled with some street name that may or may not exist somewhere, Xth Avenue is also quite quite unique and different, even from the other two Yudai songs. It's introduced with this interesting part, a piano, chimes, and drums. It could possibly set up another great song. It goes into the main section with the wind part that's serviceable enough, but unfortunately, this is where the song starts to fall. The wind part itself doesn't leave me too impressed with its melody, nor does any of the background instrumentation. Plus, it's all too densely compacted into this 2-minute 40-second song. If I can put it into words, Xth Avenue just gives too little. The main part is boring, but also too short as a symptom of its short length. In fact, this applies to all the sections. They're all too repetitive and don't bring much to the table. It's exacerbated by the second section, where instead of offering some neat change-up for progression, it just retreats to the main part like almost nothing ever happened. There's slight changes, but it's still pretty much nothing in the larger scale of the song. So that means, unfortunately, Xth Avenue falls all the way down to C tier right in the middle of the scale. It's kinda disappointing really. All the pressure of the almost 70 songs that came before, on top of the previous two songs both doing great, and yet we end off with just a C tier song. What a shame. Hold on, dear viewer. Before I sign off for the day, let me tell you a story about this game and its endless tunes. I was 8 years old when I first laid hands on Gran Turismo 5. Granted, its time had long passed, the servers were down and all eyes were on the shiny new PS4 entry in the series. But it didn't matter to me, because it was my first true experience with a mainline Gran Turismo game. In the following years growing up, I'd often spend my free time with a DualShock in my hand and a car under my control. And in between every race, while I explored all the little menus in the game, one of the songs in this very video would play in the background. After school, I'd open up Gran Turismo 5 to a calming jazz tune that took off some of the stress of daily life. When quarantine hit in 2020, the sounds of lounge menu music filled up the house as I spent the whole day gaming inside. I even downloaded all the songs on my devices to listen to them whenever I could, on long car trips, when working, and even when sleeping sometimes. But it wasn't until very recently when I truly understood it all. We're now in the year 2026 in the far off time of last month. The day I got rejected from my dream college, I started up Gran Turismo 5 again to record some replays for this very video, and Yudai Sato's Nightbirds started playing as the menu I'd seen hundreds of times before appeared on the screen. But instead of hopping in a car and racing, I just sat there and pondered about everything up to that point, fueled by my inner frustrations and disappointments that day. But hearing the whole song once more, I made a realization that offered a light in this mental storm. These songs were no longer just set dressing for the menus in a racing game. Slowly but surely, they had become the soundtrack to my life. All my highs, my lows, my miscellaneous moments that I don't even remember well. All of them were set to the tune of 70 or so compositions made for Gran Turismo 5. And only then could I truly know how much of an effect GT has had on my life. My first ever console game, my interest in cars and motorsport, this whole YouTube channel, all of it can be traced back to this one PlayStation series. And in the face of all this, I can offer nothing but my sincerest gratitude. Thank you, Yudai Sato, Satoshi Bandoh, Makoto, all of the artists in this video. Thank you for creating the songs that have decorated the ongoing latter half of my life. Thank you, Polyphony, for creating the memories you've given me with your racing game series. And thank you, dear viewer, for allowing me to impart all of it on you, all to help you understand just what all of this means to me. Because I know I'm not alone with these feelings. There's probably thousands of others who grew up with this game and can attest to the memories, the nostalgia, all of it. And it's for that reason that I made this video. So if there's anything I want you to take away from this, aside from all my musical opinions, it's your own memories with your own childhood games and experiences. Take a moment to think about what you grew up playing and doing, how they've evolved as interests over time, and how far you've come from that point. Because by pausing to take a look at the small things in your life, you can find a better understanding of all the bigger things within.